Hi, I'm Thomas Rowson. This year I'm fundraising for Bloodwise, and tomorrow I am heading off to this place. It's the Sahara Desert. It's the pinnacle of my fundraising year. It's 100 kilometres, and we're at the point now, because I'm packing, starting to become real. Starting to get a little bit nervous. This is all the stuff I've got. So we've got a fair few things to try and fit into the bag. Could be a little bit of a challenge. And this, for example, is my coat, which we had to get. It's lined with down. It's very nice. It goes down to -30. Apparently it gets very cold at night. So we've got to get all that into the bag, and then tomorrow it's off to Heathrow, en route to the Sahara. Yeah. It does feel a little bit like this is the wrong expedition. That's a bit more like it.
It was an early start as I left Suffolk on the first leg of my journey to Africa. By train and by tube, I made my way to London Heathrow Airport, where for the first time I met the people with whom I'd be walking the Sahara Desert. There was even time for a quick pint before we boarded our plane to Casablanca. Whilst I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't have Humphrey Bogart's classic Casablanca as the onboard film, the flight passed quickly and soon we landed. For many of us, this was our first experience of having African ground under our feet. We spent our time in a very ornate airport terminal, taking the opportunity to get to know each other that little bit more, as well as finding another excuse for a quick drink before boarding the next flight onto Anyway, it was only a quick flight just over the mountains, and then we landed, ready to find our hotel for our last night in civilization.
So it's the start of day 2. I think fits and starts is the way to describe that sleep. Here for the first sleep in Africa. Today the plan pretty much is we're going to go have a bit of breakfast now, which I'm very much looking forward to. Then it is the quick briefing, 5 hours in a bus and then a little bit of a walk. So we'll see how we go, but we're heading out from here, which is Ouarzazate, and then we're going to the desert. We'll see if we're ready.
As we made our way to breakfast, we reflected on the absolute cruelty of staying in one of the best hotels in the region. We thought of all the things we would miss over the next 6 days: showers, toilets, chairs, Snapchat, and Danish pastries. It was a very warm day for travelling, especially on a bus with intermittently working air conditioning. However, the landscape through which we were travelling took our thoughts away from the temperature. It was truly incredible, an absolute smorgasbord of beautiful vistas. I really had no idea of what to expect from Morocco, but one thing I certainly did not anticipate was taking so many photos from the bus. It certainly is a dazzling and fascinating country. We took the opportunity to stop in a small town to buy local scarves to help keep the sun off of us in the desert, and also for a quick drink in the next round of getting to know you.
Hello. Right, well, we've just stopped somewhere. I don't know where we are. We stopped somewhere and we bought these things that may or may not be called chamois, but they're definitely local scarves. They didn't tie mine because I was too tall for them. But thankfully, this is how they're actually worn.
Couldn't know this.
Yeah, and there's a camel. We'll probably see some more of those later on. We're about halfway through day 2 now, on our way to the desert, and we're looking forward to lunch.
The scenery continued to be stunning as our bus drove us closer to the start of our great adventure and was a welcome distraction from any nerves we were feeling about what lay ahead.
It's just after 8 o'clock that we left the hotel this morning, got on board the bus, and after about 5.5 hours travelling across this quite incredible country with its minimal to non-existent traffic laws, we've been dumped here, where there is nothing, absolutely nothing. And this bus, this last outpost of civilization, is going to be meeting us somewhere over there, maybe, over there, 100 kilometres away, 6 days. But once our travel has just finished, journey, only just beginning.
There was not one of us who could stop themselves from looking around at this awe-inspiring place whilst we took our lunch. Soon we prepared ourselves, ready for the adventure of a lifetime.
This is quite literally a step into the unknown. And I'm aware that this is the stupidest hat I've ever worn.
Get back in line.
Alright, it's the second stupidest hat I've ever worn.
Jeremy Swift once wrote that this huge desert is a mysterious and unfinished place. A trial run in landscape architecture where a few basic designs of sand, gravel and mountains are used repeatedly and stretched to their limits. The mountains are uncompromisingly severe. The sand dunes have a regularity unknown elsewhere in nature. The gravel plains are oceanic in scale, flat and unchanging for days of travel. In the open desert, there is too much sky, oppressively stretching from horizon to flat horizon. This was just our first taste at this mysterious place.
Should we go? Oh! It's our first proper taste of dunes. It's been royally quite rocky so far, but it's a little more like it. Oh, it's rather steep, but that's worth it.
We experienced a few more dunes on the first part of our epic voyage as we made our way towards our home for the night. A team of our guides raced ahead in Land Rovers to set up our camp ready for our arrival, and so were lifesavers. They also could literally be lifesavers, as if any of us got into trouble, they'd be able to get us out of the desert and fast. We hoped that we would never need them for this, but out in an extreme environment such as the Sahara, you're immensely grateful for any safety net you have. Rather than thinking about that, most of us were looking forward to our first night under African skies.
Well, we've got our first camp in the desert, just over my shoulder. We've been walking for about, I think it was about 2 hours 40 minutes from when we left the bus, or perhaps more accurately when the bus left us. We had a couple of little stops along the way. It's a nice easy start, I suppose, more than anything. It's hard to know how it's all going to go after this. It was better today than perhaps some of us expected, a little bit easier, and we had our first taste of a couple of dunes, but Nothing major, nothing major. And it was only a short little trip. But we are really in the middle of nowhere. And it gets really quiet. When the wind drops down, there's quite a lot of wind you can hear. But when that wind drops down, it's just silence. It's quite stunning. Eerie. It's an alien place. It definitely is. And we'll get used to it a little bit more. It's just so hard making head or tail. It's very early days. We'll get there. We'll get there. The highlight for today is going to be when that sun sets. It's a pretty good sunset so far. It should be pretty good, and we've had fairly clear skies all day. A couple of clouds coming in now. Should make for a good view. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Right, so we've just left our first desert camp and we're into our first full day in the desert. This is when we're going to really find out what we've signed ourselves up for. We're still not used to this place, we've just gone over a track and I've just looked both ways for traffic. I'm sure we'll get there. It's just a really strange place still. You don't really know what you're looking at, but you can't look away. It'd be good to get a few more kilometres under our belt. I'm sure we'll feel a little bit more into it.
We were out onto the wide open plains, which gave us so much horizon to look at. The sky was endless as we travelled this bizarre landscape. I could certainly see why Hollywood chose this place to use in its depictions of Mars.
We've reached our first stop of the day, and the word for it so far has been rocks. Tons of them. We've just been walking over rocks, but now it's starting to look a little bit more like the desert we were expecting. Look, camels in the dunes, maybe a few more clouds than we were expecting, but it's giving us a little bit of protection from the sun, which is always welcome. Push on through the dunes to lunch.
The dunes, however, did not last long, and soon we were back onto the rocks. We were discovering for ourselves that only a quarter of the Sahara is actually sand. We also discovered this well. There are wells like this dotted across the desert, so that travellers and those hardy few who live out here can stay hydrated. As our immune systems would not be suitably adapted to the water, and with a sufficient amount of bottled water with us, we left this drink for our camels. With our transport refuelled, we continued on. The sun had mercifully stayed behind the clouds, keeping the temperatures down, but the going was still far from easy. We were looking forward to a well-earned break for lunch. The wind, on the other hand, had other ideas.
We're just heading off from lunch, which has been curtailed for about half an hour. As you might be able to hear, the wind has picked up quite a lot. And there's concern we're going to have a bit of a storm, which is why I've got these ski goggles on, and I've ditched the world's stupidest hat. Alright, the world's second stupidest hat for the scarf. It's the first time I've put one of these on. I don't think it's going to hold, but we'll wait and see. We've also had a few drops of rain, so the general plan seems to be get our heads down a little bit, try and get to camp a little bit sooner, ride out any storms we encounter.
Of course, it was just at the point that we needed to press on that we had to traverse tougher terrain. Walking up the sand dunes was trying and tiring work. Each time you put your foot down, the ground underneath it retreated, resulting in little headway for the effort put in. It was almost literally a case of one step forward and two steps back. Before, we could walk at our own pace and in our own space. Now, we had to stick together. Whilst it hadn't exactly been sunny earlier, the sky had certainly turned darker. There was a storm on its way, and we could feel it. On the flat, we could see the storm closing in on us. The huge distances we could see that morning were now drastically reduced. Back on the plains, we were out of the partial shadow of the dunes. Not only was the wind starting to pick up, but it was able to hit us with great force out in the open. We had to push on, and we had to keep the pace up. In the desert, storms can hit you hard and fast, without much warning, and leaving you without shelter. As a unit, we continued our march towards our evening camp and sanctuary from the storm.
So it's the end of day 3. It's given us a bit of an idea of what we're actually doing. A few dunes to get some, a lot more of that. We've made camp in good time. We didn't get caught in a huge amount of the storm, but as you can probably see, the wind is still up, so I'm imagining we're going to get quite a lot of that a little bit later. So maybe not too much sleep tonight. The horizon is definitely closed in. So, day 4. We've been on the go for about 12 minutes, 13 maybe, and we were straight into the dunes. It's what we're expecting, and we're now heading out to this flat where it's a bit difficult to show on the camera. You can really see the curvature of the earth. There is just nothing. This is Africa. This is what we've seen in the pictures. This is what we expected. And the question of how long this shirt would stay white didn't even make it out of camp.
With the morning sun behind us, we set out in high spirits. We were walking through a truly breathtaking place. It was striking and natural, an extreme beauty which, in all honesty, left me a little bit lost for words.
This might sound like a rather daft thing to say. It's quite hot in the desert. I mean, we've got the sun out, like we didn't have yesterday. Yesterday was gorgeous, we got very lucky actually. It's only 10 o'clock. See now where we have breaks for lunch. Walking in the midday sun. So much fun. But what does amaze me, all this vegetation. There's been tons of it. Absolute tons. There's trees all over the place. Admittedly, this has been quite a wet year out here in the desert. Whatever a wet year for the desert constitutes. But even so, it's quite a lot. It does give us the faith that if this stuff can survive, so can we.
There was no sign of any rain coming soon though, as the sun beat down on us from the endless sky. The heat certainly made the going tough, but that was no matter. We were loving every minute of our own proper African adventure. The dunes weren't getting any easier, but by now we were experts and taking them in our stride.
This is definitely a bit more duney. Quite sandy. And a little bit of wind. Hence the stupid goggles. But they're the right things. Not a cloud in the sky. Getting quite warm now. On we go. That's the last time I'm running. That was a stupid idea.
We continued through the dunes to find that evening's camp, where we were greeted by an incredible spectacle that took our breath away. Yeah, not quite what I had in mind. I was thinking a little bit more like this.
From the start of the trip, we've been put on to zombie watch. Don't share anything, keep everything to yourself, hygiene, don't catch the plague, things like that. But we've got to the point now where a few days in, a few people are starting to feel a little bit dodgy. Managed to get away with it so far, but it does seem to be less a case of if we get sick, more when.
I only was disappointed